We on. We are live.
Live. Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Can I Be Honest? I'm here with Dewan Dandridge. So this week, there's a lot going on. Trump canceling his trip to Tulsa in Juneteenth. We got Biden comparing MLK's death to George Floyd's death. We have Rayshard Brooks being shot by cops in Atlanta. And we have the protests making some forward progress. You have Breonna's Law introduced in Louisville. You have Miami-Dade County barring the chokehold. There's a whole lot going on. Here's the time now. We'd love for you to invite your friends, take a moment, share this with people. One of the things that we love is to really engage with people, get honest conversations going. So if you want to call in, there's a number you can text, 313-473-0499. So be inviting the friends. We definitely want to hear from you. We want to hear from all sides of the spectrum. Dewan, what are you thinking going into this week?
I am thinking that these people that are watching this show are probably just as hurt, tired, frustrated as we are, but still need a place to process these heavy subject matters. And as I was getting ready, trying to get my mind ready all day today, it's like, man, like I wish we didn't have anything fresh to talk about. And maybe one day we'll have to, find a different subject matter. But, unfortunately, we still have plenty to talk about, and a lot of it is fresh. So I'm excited to hear what's going on with you guys. I'm excited to have this conversation with Steve. And like, always, we have no shortage of things to talk about. Ralph, you want to tell them why?
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.
Dewan, where do you want to start?
Let's take it from the Donald Trump announcing that he was going to host his first rally in Tulsa and on Juneteenth, June 19th. So I think that's a great place to start. I know that you wanted me to talk a little bit about Juneteenth. I think we should talk about Juneteenth and, Black Wall Street, right?
Yep.
Or the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre a little bit. So if you're watching and you're like, maybe even I was 15 years ago, right? You probably have never heard of some of these things. So the significance of Juneteenth is like after the Emancipation Proclamation, which was, I believe, January 1st, 1863 was going into effect. There were some, dishonest slave owners in Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and some other southern states that skip my mind right now. And they never let those that were in bondage know that they were free. So they carried on conducting themselves as slaves, working for free for another 2.5 years. So June 19th, I believe it was 1865, was the day that Major General Gordon Granger made an announcement in Texas that all slaves were to be freed on that day. So many people take this as a day to acknowledge that. And
We lost you. We lost your audio. We lost your audio. So a lot of people take that time to celebrate and to acknowledge that. That's where you left off.
am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Cool. So yeah, a lot of people celebrate and acknowledge it, and it's one of those things like everything else, right? There's a wide range of perspectives. I think one of the things that's said around my home is, why would we celebrate that day and not celebrate January 1st, 1863, right? So people are all over the spectrum, but it's a day that many aren't even aware of. So the significance of him announcing his first rally was going to happen on that date was controversial for that reason, right? But also when you couple that with the location, and you talk about like Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was a very affluent Black community, where you had like people in that community that would actually loan money. Am I going in and out?
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
You had people in that community that would actually loan money to some of the white citizens in the surrounding communities. Well, there was what we call the Black Wall Street Massacre, or the Tulsa, Oklahoma Massacre. And I would say, like, Google it. You can find some information. There's some really informative documentaries out. And, you know, they just took their wealth. There was like the one time when we can say that there were bombs dropped in this country was, you know, during that time. Like, they actually bombed that community and, you know, went and looted and raided. You talk about like riots, right? You talk about riots, like that was a riot where the white people in the surrounding community went and actually ran up in their homes. Like, if they were there, shot, killed them, and like looted, took their belongings, and set their homes ablaze. So the significance of him announcing his rally on Juneteenth in that location is one of the things that raised awareness and got a lot of people upset with him. And from my timeline, it looked like people was upset with him and all of their friends that were supporters of his. Right. So yeah, I think that's the significance of that. And that's one of the reasons we want to talk about that today.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be good to talk about why they're upset. And one of the things in not knowing what he was going to do or say or etc., I kind of paused to retain at least some judgment until I actually saw what he would say. And I think that that's at least worth talking about. Because, you know, you're one of the people that tends to wait and see in some ways too. And so, you know, that's interesting because I think there's some dissonance in terms of like, well, why are you, like, he didn't even do anything yet. Why are you upset? So for me, like, my response and the whole, I think the dissonance around Trump's connection to things like George Floyd and to other things that you see happening in the U.S. now, and people point back to Obama as well and say that he stirred the pot. I always look at like organizational culture. So in any organization, whether it's church, business, etc., like how the person at the top, how she operates, like how their natural DNA, culture, just code of conduct is, like that trickles down naturally into every other area. So if they're like really personable, you see that come out like from at every level. And it's not like 100%, everybody's still got their personality. But I think when you see, for me, and this is my biggest concern with him, like, honestly, like, I'm a strong independent. Like, I really, like, when I looked at everybody else that was on the table as far as Republicans went, I would have been fine. My biggest concern with him was that he would do just this or World War III. And so that he would come in and he's done it. I mean, when you see him like just hammering and calling Republicans ugly, like as part of like his, like, this is how I operate. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're ugly as a female, you're ugly as a male. Like it like that kind of stuff was mind blowing to me. And then you get to the place where you're in the White House and you're tweeting at business owners and you're telling reporters like they don't think, and you're like having and then you're saying Mexico sends their worst people, and you talk about shithole countries, I pause for a minute, like, but like, you know what I'm saying? When you begin to like continue to say this and this and this and this and thing after thing after thing after thing, that's going to like, we were ready for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were people already like making their comments, and now it's like you're emboldening that spirit rather than saying like, look, hey, let's bring it down. Let's bring humanity back into the conversation. Let's bring love and empathy. Let's listen. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's none of that. So like, what I think that's part of the disconnect. I don't think that people necessarily get that, like, and the organizational like impact that he has like on the US. And so like, as you view that kind of stuff, like, I'm assuming like you're reading all of that into it, like everything that he said across the board, which is nuts, into like that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is we like want to like judge somebody like him and not give him the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yep.
Based on all the stuff that you just described and some of the examples that you gave. So we can make assumptions, right? Like, is this you thumbing your nose at this history?
Yep.
Is you like rubbing it in people's face? I thought it was really interesting that he did it. Like, that announcement came shortly after the street was renamed leading into the White House. So, I mean, I know that, you know, based on history, he's been known to do a tit for tat thing. But I also realized that, like, you know, I don't put it past politicians to take advantage of a moment, right? Like, so I was thinking there's also a chance that he could go and I get it. Like, my hope and me being an objective listener and also optimistic sometimes makes me sound naive, gullible, and I'm cool with that, right? But I was like, there's also a chance that he could go down there and maybe like provide some type of reparations for those families, right? Because you're a couple generations, like there are not many living survivors, you know, that are alive now. I think there may be one or two that may have recently passed. But, you know, there's still descendants that are in that area. And there was no insurance for the people that lost their homes, right? I think that if any insurance claims were made, it may have been to some of the white land and business owners there. So I think that I was thinking that maybe he'll go down there and, you know, offer some type of reparations. And I was waiting to hear exactly what the call was going to be, exactly what was going to go down before, you know, I made my decision and to say anything about it. He get, I guess, the pushback, and some of his advisors must have advised him not to do that. You said something when you said, I am a strong independent, and you put emphasis on strong. And then you said, I would have been okay with any of the Republicans on the platform other than him. So like, how do you like identify as a strong independent, but if it was anybody else besides him, you would have been okay with them? You mean okay with them being the nominee and running, or okay with them that they would have had your vote?
I to be honest, I mean, and this isn't about politics, I never liked Hillary. Like, I just didn't. Like, there was I viewed her as a career politician. I didn't trust her, which is important. I think that comes into a lot of people's votes one way or the other. I definitely didn't trust Trump. I mean, I don't want to keep talking about Trump. His when they asked him about the Bible, it was 100% comical. But it's just little things like that. It's like the little lies about stuff you don't even have to lie about. Like, it just, I don't know. It's nuts when it's like that blatant, like not even trying to like, that's, you know, I appreciate like people having the respect for me as a person to like try to make their lies seem like plausible. Oh God. Yeah, so I really, it's year to year. It's what's going on a number. Like, I'm not a one issue voter, but yeah. So anyway, I was also interested in. I was very intrigued by what he might say, what he might do. And he's said and done some things. Like, I was surprised how quickly the COVID thing came out, like how the package came out, which would have been similar to what I think Obama would have done, and similar to what Obama did, honestly, with the funds that came out during the recession there. And so I was that was very, what'd you say?
Go ahead, never mind.
So I was very, so he surprised me. I was surprised about the things that he said about taking people's guns in 2018. That didn't end up happening, but he was like, let's just take the guns, like, from people that shouldn't have them, from certain people, and we'll deal with the court system later. Like, he was trying to convince his cabinet of this. And that was like mind blowing to me. So he's done some things that surprised me. So I was definitely like intrigued to see what he might say on Juneteenth, because I wouldn't put it past him that, like, he could actually come in and say something that would really mess the election up for Biden, honestly. So anyway, so I don't know if that's a good transition to talk about that. Again, we do want you guys to call. Like, there's a lot to talk about, so we'd love to get you guys on the show. If you wanna call in, text the number that's scrolling at the bottom, 313-473-0499. We'd love to get your feedback, get your really. I don't care where you're coming from. We want to get you on here. So yeah, Biden makes this comment comparing Dr. King's, and you might be a little more familiar with it than I am, but basically he's comparing the impact the King's death had on the U.S. versus George Floyd's death. So
yeah. So I think he talked about it from a global perspective, right?
Yep.
And it's crazy because the way we get the information is a lot of times we see it on our social media timelines before we actually see the article or the video and catch the interview. So that's the way I saw it. And I was like, oh, he said what? Right? I mean, because like there's nobody as like beloved in America as Martin Luther King Jr., right? And it's funny because like our memory is so short term. It's like, it's like I wish he could have experienced some of this love when he was alive. But he's no longer a threat. So it's fair to love him universally now. So I mean, making that comparison, if I'm advising him, like I would have advised him to never do that.
Yeah.
I will say this, like it is interesting to see the protests, for me personally, that are happening all around the globe, and is directly, I believe, is directly connected to George Floyd and people being able to see it and like happen and watch that type of like graphic footage. And again, that's for me, like not ever seeing it myself. I refuse to watch it. But so I'm not so much like tripping on Joe Biden. Over that, I didn't think it was like wise at all. But I'm not getting ready to hold a grudge over him for saying that, because when you look at what's happening all around the world, at the end of the day, it's loss of life. So I'm sensitive to loss of life. So I don't want to say anything that's going to disrespect George Floyd. I don't want to say anything that's going to disrespect Martin Luther King Jr., right? And I don't want to give any more pain to their families other than they endured. I don't want to give any more pain to us in this country than we've already endured, based on like the sacrifice that both of them have made, right? So that's why I would leave stuff like that alone. You know what I mean? It's like we have this thing of that where we can actually like think that we're showing affection and love and respect to people, and just make them a talking point and compare like their lives and their deaths like that. And it's just something about that that's weird and sick and twisted to me personally. So
yep.
Yeah. So I mean, but what's your take on it?
I don't know. It's just concern for the country in general, like regardless of who gets elected. I think his I'm just Yeah, it's just another layer of concern. I think his sensibilities are consistently on display, and I'm not excited about them. So that's that's it. Like, like how you would com- just get to the place where you think that comparison is appropriate, and that actually reminds me of some comments somebody else made. I'm not gonna go there though. Uh, it's just it's tough. So
Yeah, I mean, so I had I did that thing where you see one of your friends on social media make a statement, and then you're like, oh, what are you saying here? And then you go to their comments. Y'all probably don't do it. I'm probably the only person that does that, right? You know what I mean? And you don't comment, but you just like kind of like become a little like Facebook voyeur and like scroll through their comments to see what everybody else is saying. Um, so as I was doing that, I saw it like a friend had posted what Biden said. Um, and then as I went look through the comments, one of his friends commented like, how dare he compare like Martin Luther King Jr. to this like criminal like crackhead, right?
yep,
I was like, wow, and
yep,
it's like,
yep,
like I won't go deep into it, but like I have family members that have struggled with addiction and to crack specifically, right? I've had family members that didn't make it out of it and like kind of succumbed to their addiction, but I've also had family members that have come through that addiction and are amazing people
yep,
um, that are making like strong contributions to our society. And to like just make George Floyd that um, and think that you're attacking Joe Biden when you say that, um, how you can do or say something like that and think that you're better than Joe Biden for just making a comment, that is the thing that really troubles me about where we find ourselves at as like civilized people, right?
yep,
And that's troubling as an optimistic, objective work towards creating allegiances and partnerships with people across the aisle, with white people specifically. Um, that's something that's so troubling that sometimes it makes me want to just, you know, disconnect and say, I'll roll with some of the white people that I formed relationships with, but people that are still in that space, like y'all can have y'all thoughts, ideologies, and everything else. I'm no longer interested. And and I'm somebody that's like, like super hopeful and putting a lot of work to inspire everybody to kind of get in this fight, if you want to call it a fight.
yep,
But so yeah, it's like that. That makes me really, those type of comments from people make me really look foolish in front of black folks. It's like, look, I told you ain't no hope. You know what I mean? You better give up on,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
find some good in these people that have oppressed us for generations. You know what I mean?
yep. Yep, I'm gonna say hi. Shout out a couple: Rashid Jeffries, Jennifer Jones, Kathleen Sly, Lisa Holler, Michael Keith, Michael Smith, actually, Simone Cato, Christy Bartek, Uncle Gary, Aunt Wafa, Mandy Downey, Sheila Reed, Michelle Robinson, Caressa Thomas, Kevin Waterman, Sean Michael, Luke Sly, Adam Heikela. Thanks for being here, everybody. Feel free to call in. The number is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. We do want to talk to you. This Dewan, what you bring up right now. I don't know if you got anybody that you wanted to shout out that I did not mention, but we do appreciate you watching. If you want to invite other people that you think are interested or other people you think might call in. But yeah, the part of the problem is like we jump in the like we have so far removed ourselves from the people on the other side of these glowing screens that we have, that we just respond like it's all up here, and there's no and somebody criticized me for being too emotional and for trying to pull on people's emotions because logic is how people make decisions. And I was like, honestly, you don't realize like a lot of our decisions are made like with the heart, and a lot of, you know, as well. And I want to bring the heart back into the conversation so that we stop just like being so sterile and so calloused, because with the amount of stuff we've consumed, like from in the media, like at this point allows us to just like view one thing after the other and just like go hard like that. You know what I'm saying? Immediately, without even thinking like, this is somebody's son. It is interesting to me, as someone who has had multiple drug and alcohol addicted people in my family, it is very interesting to me to hear those kind of responses. And also hear and listen to how we're starting to respond differently to people in the opioid epidemic, and some of the words that are being used around there. And so you see some compassion entering there. I just think as we talk across the aisle, all that stuff, like there is something so wrong with all of us that like we can't just have conversations as people, and we don't actually see each other as human. And I think that's like until we get that, man, that's it's always going to be a problem.
Yeah, and it's rough, right? Because I think that the frustration and the pain and the weight feels like if you're Black, you always have to be the bigger person, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
you're expected here to, you know, I often say like offer up forgiveness, like nobody's offered up repentance, right? And that part is frustrating. Like repentance or atonement, you know, like comes like if you're looking for forgiveness normally. But I think that we've, you know, like, and sometimes it's not even like forgiveness.
Oh, you froze again. You froze.
Yeah.
I think it's the internet. You said sometimes it's not even forgiveness.
Yeah, sometimes it's not even forgiveness. Sometimes it's shut up. Like, I'm tired of hearing you talk about that. You're going to play the race card. Here we go, play the race card. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like, and then like, and if people pull away and don't want to stay like at the table to have discussion, dialogue, to move forward, then we're seen as unreasonable. You know what I mean? It's like there are all these rules that are placed, and it's crazy because like we start to do it too, right? Like we take that learned behavior and we do like these same things. It's not maybe not the repentance part and forgiveness part, but it's the you know, as soon as somebody, you always say it, as soon as somebody says something I disagree with, I'm ready to hammer them. I'm waiting on them to. You know what I mean? And there's so many reasons to not be hopeful when it comes to this. But like I refuse to go that route. And I have to keep telling myself and reminding myself of stories that would breathe kind of hope. So I'll share this quick story. I had a friend of mine who runs you know, a pretty like big company. And I won't go into it because I want to keep that friend's identity kind of like, you know, secret. But he runs a pretty big, large size company. And he said, hey, I gave all of my employees the day off, Juneteenth off, because I didn't even know what Juneteenth was until you shared it with me the other day. But he read a really heartfelt letter that he wrote to his team to kind of like enlighten them. And he did some research of his own. Now, one might say, how does that help help anything, and the people that suffered with serving another 2.5 years unjustly, as if the years that they served before that were just, right? But how does that help them or anybody, you know, especially if you're getting ready to give a workforce that's probably not even predominantly Black, like a day off to celebrate, a paid day off, right? And that's a question that I actually asked before.
Yep.
I hear it from anybody else. I assume that I will hear that if I share that story. But I would say what gives me hope is the fact that, like, from not even running that organization, I can have influence in that organization from the relationship and friendship that I've cultivated with this individual, to where they would be willing to look at themselves and position themselves to learn from me, as I have them, because, you know, there's some things that I'm doing that I asked them to speak into to help me navigate some waters that are kind of new for me. So
yeah, and I think that having real dialogue is so much needed. I call it, the way I refer to it is relational capital. I don't think most of us have enough relational capital to be able to actually balance the information that we take in. We don't have enough people that don't look like us, like real authentic relationships, in ways where real conversations are taking place. Like, there's surface level, yeah, you're friends with the guy at work and whatnot, but those kind of conversations, like, where you're actually like listening. Like, I want to know, like, I want to understand, and it's not just like like, let me shoot you 20 questions, but because of the relationship, like, things naturally come up, or like I'm paying attention to what you're saying about certain things, and so then I'm going to ask you about, like, hey, I saw your video, blah, 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 and just be able to ask about that, and then growing. Like, I think it's so much easier to just leave you behind this screen and to interact around like really, really like heavy issues there, than to get into the discomfort of actually having to talk to somebody face to face and ask questions, like, and put myself out there. Like, man, I don't even know what that is. So sorry, you know, I feel kind of weird even saying that, but like, you know, forgive me for my ignorance, but like, what does that mean? Like, is that like, and why is that important? And a lot of it is going back to what you said too. Like, there is our own research that we can do. Research is great, and you should do it, and we can prep ourselves, but like, there is no substitute for actual relationship. You know what I'm saying?
So give me that last part again. I lost you for a second.
There's no substitute for actual relationship. Research is great. We should do it. We should prep and work to understand culture and context and everything, and really work to empathize outside of that, so that we're more intelligent going into a conversation. But there's just no substitute for actual, genuine, heartfelt relationships, sharing. So,
yeah. So I think we got our first caller in, and while we're getting ready to bring the caller in, I would like to say on the relationship part, one of the things that is kind of, one of the things that I've noticed and I've observed is that, like, when you're entering into these relationships, oftentimes there's an expectation that, you know, maybe the Black person has had a rough life and a rough upbringing. That'll be the truth in some cases. Like, if you're entering into a relationship and, you know, the place where I grew up at, right, like Detroit, the issues, the problems, and the challenges are glaring. Like they're really obvious. You can see them, right? But if you come from another place and have a different background, the challenges, problems that plague your community may not be as obvious. So if you're entering into a relationship and it, like, all of the baggage and the issues are one-sided, that can be, like, you know, unhealthy, I would say. So like, if you can come into that space letting people know that you're a real human being, what I mean is, like, share like some of the ugly, right? Share some of the things that you had to struggle with and overcome, like coming into that relationship, and bring some balance to it as a.
Yep, you cut out, you froze. So my mom is actually about to join us, so we can bring her on. And when you froze for a second, my mom's. You can finish that up as we bring her on.
Yeah, let's bring her on. But I would say, like, come in and bring into that space a real version of yourself.
Yep.
And not expect or allow somebody to believe that you haven't been through anything in your life that you had to like deal with, wrestle with, struggle with. So we're ready for the guest.
Juan, I really appreciate what you just said.
Do you have a light you can turn on?
I do.
Kathleen, is that it? Oh, it's Kathy.
You don't like me in the dark?
That's
No,
better.
Juan, I appreciate what you just said very much so. I think I'm considerably older than both of you, but my perspective has always been shot down. And some of the times that I've commented on here, it's been immediately dismissed. But I watched Martin Luther King be assassinated, and it was life-changing. I think what I want to say, this is not on topic with what you're talking about, but all my life I've been involved. I've had significant people in my life who were Black. And my best friend was Black. And I didn't call her my Black best friend. I called her my best friend. Dwan, I've never referred to you as Stephen's Black business partner. I've always referred to you as Dwan, or Stephen's business partner, like Stephen's college roommate. I didn't call him his Black one. I don't call my daughter my Black daughter. And I think that's where the heart of a lot of it lies. I had a college student check me about 20 years ago, or maybe more. And I was describing someone. Quit laughing at me, or get off the.
Is that me? But it's me, right?
Be quiet and listen.
I'm just saying.
No, I was describing a situation, and honestly, I can't remember if it was an Asian I was talking about or a Black person. And I described them by the color of their skin. And he immediately checked me and said, "What does that have to do with it?" And I drew back, and what do you mean? Why do you have to call out the fact of the color of their skin? And it really, really affected me, and I've never forgotten it. And it's not that I'm trying to, when I mentioned it a few weeks ago, it's not that I'm downplaying that. Dwan, you define yourself as an angry Black man. I just think you're a wonderful man. I would never describe you as an angry Black man, because angry to me means volatile, and you're not. But I think we need to go a lot further back and check ourselves in terms of how we look at people, how we describe people. I would never refer to my 4 beautiful grandchildren as mixed, my mixed grandchildren. Never. It would never even occur to me. And so I think for me, and a lot of people dismiss that, but I think it starts there, is how do I see you? I see you as my brother in Christ. I see my daughter as the girl I adore. I see the girls I go to church with as my sisters in Christ. It's just, I think it starts there. I really do. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I heard Denzel Washington and a few other actors respond the other night, and Morgan Freeman was one of them, and they said something about him being a Black actor, and he said, "I'm not a Black actor, I'm an actor." And Denzel said the same thing, that it starts at home with what we teach our kids. So anyway, that's my soapbox. So I'd love to hear your response.
Thank you so much. Steve, you want to go first, or want me? Go ahead and go first, Steve.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let you go first.
What'd you say?
I told Steve I'm gonna let him go first. That's an inside joke.
Oh,
Gotcha.
you just threw me off, man. So I honestly think that ultimately, I think that's the goal. And I think when you introduce, I think when you look at the dynamics, there's always been division and there's always been people trying to one up each other. Race was introduced to kind of be able to do this like across color lines, like the idea, like categorization, and we think categorically. And so this kind of was just like, oh, here's a way we can use these categories to our financial advantage, to our just overall livelihood advantage. We can go like a step further from just not even just identify, but then we will dehumanize, like literally dehumanize, and say you are not a human. And so that's how, like, that's part of like what gets into the psyche of like why it's okay to kill you, rape you, take your land, take you from your land to a different place. Like those, like I think the psyche and the psychological components of it were very, very important. And I think also like that stuff doesn't, like the fact that even people that are still alive today have been to picnics where they hung black people. Like it's a family gathering. Like we're like, come on, Timmy, we're going to hang Jim. You know what I'm saying? Like what that does to your psyche, and what like all of us have done to our psyche. I don't think it's just as simple as going now just trying to hit the reset button and be like, okay, we're all just going to call each other human now. The other thing the categories do is that you get to follow statistics, so that you can look at things across the board. You can compare like what. So when you look at Acts, for instance, I think it's chapter 6. Like there's a certain ethnic population within the new church that's not getting cared for the same way, and they identify that specific ethnic population. They call it out and say, hey, these Jewish widows, like this portion of them is not getting the same care as these other Jewish widows. And so they're like, hey, let's fix that, And so I think that's part of what categories do. I think ultimately, if we could get back to that place, like what you're talking about, I think that's ideal. I think until we fix some of the inequalities and the inequities, I think we still need to kind of put a microscope on it and say, hey, let's continue to look at what's going on across.
I agree with you, but I really do believe it starts in the home. I really do.
100%.
I think that's where the rubber meets the road. I knew more racial slang than probably either one of you have ever heard. My grandfather worked at Oldsmobile, and I'm not proud of this even in the least. During the Depression, he had 5 children. He quit his job at Oldsmobile because he was forced to sit and have lunch with a black man. That horrifies me. It's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard of, and I'm ashamed. I mean, I'm horrified actually. But even though my mom and my dad both grew up and both were prejudiced, very, I don't know. It's a choice, I guess, is what I'd like to say. And maybe it's being poo-pooed and, well, why shouldn't we? We're proud that we're black, or we're proud that we're white. But just like Stephen, I think you really nailed it a while back when you said how this escalates during campaign years, because it does. Oh, it does. And suddenly it's not a dirty cop that shot somebody, it's a white cop that shot a black man, or it's a black man that raped a woman, or whatever. Then it all becomes very essential that everybody knows that. And typically it's not. It's just a dirty cop. Yeah. I'm not dismissing it by any means, but
yeah. I would say my take on it, and I have lots of angles and layers, but for the sake of time, I'll stick to a few. I would really love to be able to, teach my children that they're just children and that they're just people. The problem is you are not the only person that they're going to have to deal with when they go out into the world, right? They're going to have to deal with people that are like your grandfather today, right? Not 2 generations ago, right? Like my 15-year-old daughter, who when she was 12, when she was at Blue Lake Camp, she dealt with her first form of aggressive racism, right? Like not, just, little, something that you can ignore and get by. She had to deal with a young man that was saying, what they did when they freed the slaves was illegal. Like, you guys should still be property. They took people's property, right? Now she's at Blue Lake Camp. Now at Blue Lake Camp, there's a very, very small percentage of Black people there. So she and a young Black male addressed it and dealt with the situation. She was left hanging. Like, all the adults that were there that could hear what the young man was saying, nobody responded. Nobody came to her aid. Now, she has been trained on how to deal with these situations, right? Because I know that she's going to have to deal with them. My wife knows that she's going to have to deal with these type of situations. So she's been in training. The other thing is, like, when we talk about like simple things like even being a brother and sister in Christ, right? It's like the churches that you grew up going to and probably still go to, the churches that I grew up going to, like, there is a very intentional image and depiction of the person that we call the Messiah and that we worship, right?
Yep.
He was a man of color. Like, he was not a white dude.
Right.
But like, we don't see it important to ever even address that, right?
I know.
And we still, to this day, the movies that we produce, like, have 0 people of color in those movies.
Yep.
So I would say, like, to want and desire something that's not yet a reality is cool to do, but like the world is going to treat Bati, my 14-year-old son, like a Black male. So it's important that I prepare him for that.
I agree 100%.
And what I would say on me saying that I'm an angry Black man, I also said I was a lot of other things, right? So I say I'm an angry Black man, but I'm also a happy Black man, right? I'm also both, right? I'm also sad, right?
You're also what?
I'm also sad, right? And I can be all of those things. And the reason I say that and acknowledge that is because there's something to be said when a Black man gets emotional or Black woman gets emotional, they're given a label as the angry Black man. And what I do is like take the power of somebody giving me that and own it and say, yeah, like, no, I'm an angry Black man, but I let that inspire me, maybe influence me, but I don't let it run me, right? So you won't catch me walking around like angry all the time. But when we have George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and we have a fresh death to talk about today, that had that person not been Black, I mean, had they been white, maybe we're having a different discussion. Like, I think we have things to be angry about.
Oh,
right?
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
I'm angry and proud to be, Black.
If I were there, I'd hug you.
I know you would. So
no, and that's why I wasn't even going to call in tonight, was because of that very thing, because there's so much going on, as you know.
Well, we're glad that you did, and I'm not surprised that you're like, I mean, one, that you love us enough to call in. You're brave enough to call in, and I know, I mean, like, I definitely see where Steve gets some of like just that honesty from. You got any words you want to say before we get some other? Do we have anything else waiting to jump on, Ralph? If not, you are free to hang out with us for a bit, and as we take some more comments and questions.
Yeah, and I do want to move on to the next to talk about the Atlanta thing. But I'm very thankful that you called in, Mother, because I think these are the kind of conversations that we need to have. We need to have real dialogue. I definitely appreciate Dewan's response, and I think just being able to talk about this stuff in a space that's safe, and that's what like I want to continue to say that like when you call in, I don't care. Like we don't care what you call in to say or ask or etc. Like our goal is to always flesh it out, and this is the like our version of building relationships here is to be able to like have those kind of questions, those kind of conversations, and just say, look, like let's just talk about it, because it's when we don't talk about stuff and when we shut people down or when things get bottled up, like that creates more and more tension and more misunderstanding rather than building relationships, which has the potential for love and empathy. And now, like, even when I don't expect like anybody to come in and have something that one of us say, and now we're like, oh, okay, and you just turn around and that completely changes your mind. But hopefully, like we all walk away and have something to think about and something to grow. And now, even if I don't agree with you, then it's like, oh, I get where she's coming from. It makes sense to me. So next time I hear somebody say something similar, it gives me a little bit of insight into where they're coming from, which hopefully allows me to interact with them in more positive ways. So I definitely really appreciate you calling in.
You guys are doing a great job, both of you.
Thank you. And we might have Waka coming on soon.
Good.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Lord bless you both.
Bless you. So Rayshard Brooks, he was at I believe it was a Wendy's, and he falls asleep. So the cops called. He falls asleep. Sounds like in the drive-thru. You see footage of the cops talking to him in Atlanta, and they ask him to pass a sobriety test. He cannot pass, and that's when they go to apprehend him. He struggles. He grabs one of the tasers. You see some of this on the body cams. He grabs one of the tasers. And then you see surveillance footage of him running away. As he's running away, he points the taser at the cop who's following him. And that's when the cop goes for his gun, pulls it out, and that's the end of that story. Yeah. I typically avoid talking about these specific, the ones that are where there's resistance involved and et cetera, and I'll get into that, but I'd love to hear your response to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taught like, look, you don't fight the police. I mean, like that's not a winning battle, right? But it's rough, man, right? It's like, okay, I just find it really hard to not think about it like as a Black man again. Like I find it hard to not think about like if you find somebody asleep behind the wheel, car's not moving, the car's not getting ready to move. I just think that there's a way to handle that doesn't lead to this situation. And again, not being able to control the narrative that's in my mind based on like recent events, based on my own experiences. I still recall several times being like pulled over for no reason. I still recall being in places where the police like would pull me and a friend over just because where the the city that we were in, right? They want to know what we were doing there, right?
And we've seen a lot of that. So we've actually seen
Yeah.
a lot of that recently. So I've seen
Yeah.
videos in a lot of different settings where just Joe white person is there I go with the labels again. But like is like stopping a FedEx dude or like a freight driver who came in to drop something who's in a little neighborhood. What are you doing here? Car is blocked. He's trying to leave. No, I want to know why you're here. I want you to show me ID. Like, bruh, like, I don't need to show you ID. You're not the police. Get the hell out of my way. Like, we've seen a lot more of that happening. I can't even say more happening, but I've seen at least 3 different scenarios of that happening within the past 2 weeks where people have had like actual footage of Jerry coming up like and getting in the way, blocking the road so you can't leave until the police get here. So keep going.
And see, like, that's the part that doesn't get told, right? It's like there'll be a week from now, we'll know this man's whole criminal history if he has, right? What we won't know is all those other interactions he had with police officers. We won't know if police pulled him over before and beat the hell out of him for no reason. You know what I mean? We won't know if one of his like friends like has a terrifying story of interacting with the police. Like, we won't know and we won't hear those things, right? So there's a lot of context that is missing that would and like
that's a good point.
wanting to be a person, just wanting to be a man. I made a responsible decision to pull over here and go to sleep. I don't need your help. I don't need to be arrested. I got this. You know what I mean? So like, and I'm not saying that that's what happened. We don't have a lot. There's a lot of things that we don't know, we don't understand, right? I put these things together from a very biased lens, right? Try my best to be objective, but I'm very biased, right? Bias based on my own personal experience and the history of this country, the history of this country and who she tells me she is, and history of who this country really is, right?
So Ken just put a comment up. Can you throw that back up, Ralph?
Okay.
I've
found this on the web.
Thank you, Siri. I was talking about Ken though. I remember many years ago when we used to all take our hats off driving across 8 Mile to play basketball, thinking this would stop us from getting pulled over.
Definitely. We used to go hoop at Basketball City. We'd go to Basketball City, 13 Mile, and Grosse Beck, I think. And like, we realized we wanted to go there because there was good run there, nice facility. But we knew that we might have to deal with the police going out there. And we knew that there's a good chance that if the police saw us riding 3 or 4 deep, like in a city that we, you know, in their opinion had no
don't belong in,
that we were going to get pulled over, right? Like, I mean, I have a friend, Al, who was leaving that Basketball City. He ended up getting elbowed or something where it kind of cut him. And he stopped at the 7-Eleven that we would always go to get a big gulp on the way home. I don't know why I'm giving them a commercial right now, but we need to get an endorsement deal from them. But we would always stop at this store when we were leaving.
7-Eleven.
Al went there. Al had his 6-year-old son, little Al, with him. And he was just trying to either go and get some ice or something before he like either went home or probably went to the hospital to get stitched up. I can't remember. That store owner saw him, called the police. The police came up there, like jacked Al up a bit and arrested Al. You know what I mean? It's like, so like you have that type of lens, and that's just a story that I'm able to grab from Kenny posting that on the bottom of the screen, right? Yep. So like I can just randomly pull a story out of the air like that and give you names. So anyway, I say all that to say there's a problem that we have, and there's, if we don't like figure out how to all speak out against it, we run the risk of this country that many of us love and many of us want to love and want it to love us, right? We run the risk of it turning into that Wendy's that was the scene after all of this happened.
Yep.
Right? So.
Yep. No, I think that's good. I think that, you know, thinking back through, I think that's a general white people. We've talked about this before. Your average white person, a lot of white people I know aren't huge fans of the cops, but they don't have a lot of the same thing happening upstairs that they do when, you know, average black male in America or average black person in America interacts with them because of these things that they've seen either personally or through the media, etc. And so then, like, we're not operating on the same level of trust, you know. We just aren't. So there's some things that like white people may like give to the police and be like, well, da da da, da, and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt, where it's like based upon certain interactions. I want to speak to thank you everyone who's been joining. So Justin Smith, Karen Vesprini, Taki, what's up? Wilkin, Oliver, Wagwan Mayut, Kelly Morgan, Melvin Hinton, Carrie Ann Grant, Geronimo Bonaby, what's up? I haven't talked to you in forever. Oh, we got two Geronimos in the house.
Two Geronimos.
Mark Van Andel.
Do we have a Geronimo and a Geronimo?
And Onimo. Yeah. Yeah. No, so I think that's important in talking about this. Part of why I think it's important too, even though I avoid the stuff, like I prefer talking about stuff that's a lot cleaner that you don't. So Tamir Martin is easy for me to talk about, like from not from an emotional standpoint, but from a like, hey, this is why there's problems. When we get to like a situation like the one in Atlanta with, you know, Rayshard Brooks, I know white people aren't going to care about that, and I know when I bring it up, they're going to be like, dude, you know, what do you expect them to do? Like that. And even with the conversation we had last week with the two black officers, based upon what they said, like these guys followed, these guys did what was within the law to do. Guy points a taser at him and he's running and he resisted arrest. Like he took the taser from them. It's not like he didn't pull it out of his, like, oh, I got this taser with them. He took their taser. And so like the law is on their side. And this is why I like to avoid this stuff. But I had almost an epiphany within the past couple of days regarding like how white people view this kind of stuff. And I realized like white people just, speaking for all white people right now, but I'd love to hear you guys in the comments, like white people just don't, like if that was a white person, they'd be like, bruh, you know what I'm saying? You get no love or sympathy from me. And I think that's important to kind of take, you know, there was a guy who died from his asphyxiation in 2016 that people are starting to bring up now, a white dude. There were some similar restraints being done, not quite the same, but still the breathing, like the George Floyd thing. And I think it's important because it's important to note that there are a number of white people. There actually, like overall numbers, there's more white people that die from the police each year than black people. Per capita, when you go to likelihood, that's when you get to, you know, black people being 2.5, 3 times as likely to die. We don't really care. Like white America doesn't really care about these other white Americans because they're breaking the law. Like we just don't. And so I think the reason I say that, and I say we very loosely, because I don't, you know, like I am working on sensitizing myself again towards stuff. But like I don't go, you know, again, like with everything that's happening like this, I just think this is important because it's not necessarily like we just don't care when black people die. We just don't care when people who break the law die. Like, it's just for whatever reason. We just don't. Like, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can see a video of a white person being shot, like, and they'll say the same thing. Now, we can talk about, you know, why it's not the same, but I just think it's important to kind of like really let that sink in, because I think there's so much flack given, like, and it's, as we talk about it, it feels like they just don't care about black people. It's like, no, they just don't care about anybody. You know what I'm saying? If it doesn't touch my family, and this is a symptom we see like across the board, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If it's the coronavirus, until it touches my family or people that I know, it's not even real to me. And that's a huge issue. So yeah, that's it. Like, I don't know if you even have a response to that, but
yeah, I mean, I guess that is something to think about, right? I mean, it's like, if you just don't care, right? And I guess like people just saying that, you know, would, I guess, help us to work from at least a place of honesty, right? Because, you know, that is helpful, right? It's like, and I think like trying to work to get white people to care is a mission that many of us have been aborted, right? We just want to see people locked up. You know, if you shoot and kill an unarmed person,
yeah,
right? We want to see a prosecution. We want to see a conviction. We want to see somebody sentenced, right? So like, care or don't care, you know, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, but like the weird thing though is that white people obviously care about stuff, right?
Yep.
Like, white people care about stuff getting burned down, right? Like, and they do care about that, and that's the part that's really frustrating, right? Because it's like, until we have a unified like voice saying like Black Lives Matter and let's stop like killing unarmed black men and women and kicking their doors in and like killing them, you know what I mean? And like, until we have a united voice saying that, like, don't look for me to cry out about like property and unity with you, right? It's like, I am not somebody that wants to see rough spaces for us to live in. I'm not somebody that wants to see somebody get hurt. Either way, like, I don't want to see police officers get hurt.
Yeah.
I don't like to see that. I realize that people have families. I realize these are real people in this situation, from the protesters and everybody. And I think that there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. Obviously, I don't think that. I know there is. I have a lot of that, all that stuff I just described. But like, don't look for me to come out and like be a voice of reason when it comes to stuff, if you're not going to be a voice of reason with me when it comes to life, is what it's where I'm like putting my anchor in at. But it is weird to see, you know, how like stuff and everything will make people that have been silent about some of these deaths become very vocal, you know. So,
yeah, and I think that's an important point, and this gets back into the whole issue with Kaepernick as well. I think that it was interesting to me to see, and I think it's important to think about Nate Boyer, the guy from the military who kind of worked out, like, don't sit down for the flag, like, kneel. That's more respectful. And then see Nate also get behind him after that, as somebody who served. I think that and this gets back into just how we operate in general, but like, we just don't like to concede anything, like, across the board, and to the point where we can never, like, I so don't want to hear your perspective. Like, I'm not going to concede anything. I'm not going to listen to you. I am happy to get caught up on the tactics that I disagree with, and just let that be that. So rather than like going back to like, hey, Like they're talking about this. Like I want you to stop. Like I really do. Like there's no way you're gonna convince me that that this isn't disrespectful to the flag. But there's also no way that like I'm just gonna completely ignore what you're saying and not look at the statistics, not look at like the behavior, the patterns, like that kind of stuff. Like you know what I'm saying? I don't like. I'm good. Like if you think that's disrespectful to the flag, like I'm cool with that. What's strange to me is how you're happy to completely ignore like the actual issue of why people are protesting. You know what I'm saying? Like that's always weird to me. So I get like you not like I don't like the riots. You know what I'm saying? I don't like destruction of property. Like people, we were downtown yesterday. People were like, there is no violence against inanimate objects, and I'm like, okay, like I'll be at what's your address? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like what is your address? Like, let me, where did you park? Okay, because like I bet you might think a little bit differently if it affects you. At the same time, though, like that's the thing. Like we're happy to be caught up like on semantics and tactics and everything else, and not like if we just step into the gap and be like, man, I'm sorry. Like, man, this is terrible. Like, what? Like, I want to like help in this. Is like if that's the first response, like we're much more likely to get them to listen to this like thing that I think is disrespectful or wrong or etc. And you know, rather than just be like, no, I disagree. Nope, that's disrespectful. You know what I'm saying?
That's huge. Let's as we bring Walker in, Ralph, I just want to say kind of to that point is that one of the things that's happening is we're sending mixed signals, or we're sending a bad message, right? Like when all these like executives, CEOs, and companies will start to pay attention now, when Roger Goodell from the NFL will backtrack and say we got it wrong now, right? It seems like it's a response not to what George Floyd. It seems like it's a response to the reaction. It seems like it's a response to the stuff being damaged, right? It seems like it's a reaction to like people creating an atmosphere in the downtowns of these cities that like they want people to come and patronize and people to go and work and feel safe. I think it's a reaction to that. So if that's the message that the protesters are getting, right? Like
the protesters are the rioters. Because to me now it's too muddled. It's too muddled to even like be able to tell the difference.
I would say it seems like the unified voice and the attention was received with the damage that was done. And I think that like we need to be careful in the way that that's communicated, because people want to do what's effective.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Like if you respond to the silent protest of a Colin Kaepernick before it gets to stuff getting torn down, like who wants to go back to like, the ineffective silent protest? You had a chance. You know what I mean? Like no, like, do what's going to be effective. And the only ones that will get the heat and look and be demonized and vilified will be those that are doing the damage that's visible. But there's a damage that doesn't look as ugly in the world and the people in positions of power doing this and this. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But they do this and this when you're tearing their stuff up.
Yep. Yeah, we can bring Walker on.
Welcome in there, Ralph.
Welcome, Victoria. Welcome, Eugene. Mike Young. Happy to have you listening, watching. Endurance author. Walker, you're our first like return caller. I feel like we should send you a prize or something.
Hold off on that prize, because Walker's was making comments saying that we were being a little bit too soft and he wanted us to go deeper. So don't send him a prize just yet.
Yeah, that's what I said. I have a couple of questions for both of you.
Oh no! Like, man, his questions are the worst.
I know.
Oh,
I know.
Boy.
You didn't you didn't even mention some of the things I think it's a dividing line between those candidates in a presidential election. Um, for me personally, was abortion, and I have strong feelings about that. And what is your take on that, on both of you guys? Like, what do you say?
I'll go first. So for me, I'm against abortion, right? So
Wait, you broke up a little bit. Say that again.
so me personally, I'm against abortion, right? If you ever want to hear my story, you can probably find a link to my story. Maybe we'll share it here in the comments. Like, my mother was 15 when she was pregnant with me, or when she had me, and my father was 16, right? And both my grandparents advised them and asked them to abort me, right? And basically told them to, right? So like, I wouldn't be sitting here answering this question had my father not stood up as a 16-year-old and went against basically the command of his mom and my other grandmother, right? So like, I am like not for abortion at all, right? Now I think that there, like, we have to have a real honest and balanced like conversation. I don't know if we'll be able to do all of that and dive that deep into it right now in this show, but I'd love to even start a show off with that question. But go ahead. I'll give Steve his
So I actually made a post about abortion today, which is kind of crazy, and we said we weren't going to talk about it because I feel like we actually need to talk about like the whole system, kind of what Dewan's alluding to. But I actually, my mom had complications in several pregnancies actually, and so the doctors told her, like, look, you need to get rid of this guy. And so like, I'm another one who wouldn't be here like if she had listened, and so I'm grateful to her for that. I do think the right is accused, like the pro-life movement is accused, like by the Black community. I've heard several people say, like, look, you guys are pro-life, like, until they're born, then you don't care. And so I think that we really do have to look at, like, there's a whole lot of scenarios in terms of when you look at like the death rates for Black American women compared to others. But like so there's a ton of stuff, and also environment, support systems, that kind of stuff. One of the things that people are like, the adoption rate or like the abuse rate amongst foster care is higher, etc. So that's not a good life. One of the things we don't hear talked about very much is that, like, the Black families who don't like go through an official adoption process, but will actually bring people into their house, like nephews, these like people not related to them. I think it's worth mentioning that, like, the Black babies are like 3 times more likely, 3+ times more likely than the white babies to be aborted. So when you look at like what the population would be, even if you just went back to like the same, like even if the numbers were equal, like your percentage would rise, which would create more power and more, across the US. So I think that's worth, and then you look at like the density of like Planned Parenthood options in urban areas. I think all of that needs to be fleshed out. Like, why is that? You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
but I didn't say clearly. I'm not. I am. I think women should be able to choose. I think that goes for the I think unborn women should have rights too. And I don't like when life begins and you have to do something to terminate the life. That's where you lose me. So I know I just pissed a lot of people off.
So before we, I'm because Waka looked like he's ready to ask another question. But the other thing that I want to say is, like, this is a sensitive subject matter for me.
Yeah, good.
I don't think that this is as clean cut as what I believe and me voting based on that. What I think about when we have this conversation is this: there are many people that made a decision to abort a child, and they can't walk that back. And when we have this conversation in a what I think is best, I think that, like, without taking them into consideration, I mean, if you're watching right now, please, like, know that I don't feel any better than you, and I don't place any, like, judgment on you. So, like I am sensitive to that. I know people that struggle with that. I know the people that, have all kind of questions and guilt associated with that. And like, I just want them to know that I'm not tripping on them in that way. And I don't want them to walk away from here feeling condemned, and I don't want to be insensitive to them at all, because I know many of people that regret doing that, and they don't feel like there's a space created for them to even process that, because those that, like, so many people are just like very, very boom, like, I'm against that, you murdered this, that, and the other. We're still talking about a child that belonged to them, and we don't love that child more than they do, even if they decided to go that route. So, like, that's what I want to finish with.
That's good. No, I think that's important. Michelle also echoed many people are pro-birth, not pro-life. There's a difference, and I think that's important. Like, that's a big part of the conversation that gets missed, I think, as well.
Agreed, Michelle.
And then, Karen said something similar. But go ahead, Waka. I appreciate you, Dewan, for bringing that back.
I'm mute. All right, so I agree with you, both of you guys. I am pro-life, but the last comment I heard was like pro-birth or pro-life is it two different things? I came from a third world country. God gives life, not us. We have no say on this issue. No human being can say, hey, this baby has to go, this baby has to live. And in some cases, the mothers are in risk, and, you know, whatever the case, that's like less than 1%, 2% maybe. And after we were born, we were raised the way we were raised. We're lucky, we're unlucky. You know, that's up to God too. And I'm not forcing anybody to say one way or the other to think, but that's my belief, and that matters to me to decide. Does it matter to you when you decide one way to vote, one way or the other? That's a question for both of you guys. So I guess Joe Biden was what is it? What is it called? Pro-life is on the Republican side. On the other side is
pro-choice. Pro-choice.
Yeah. Does it matter for you guys? Does it change your vote?
No, it won't change. It won't change my vote, right? Like, so I would say to say that, like, I'm going to vote, right? Because like I don't know that we're going to have more or less abortions under one president that says he's pro-life than we are under a president that says he's pro-choice, right? So, like, for me to, like, say that I'm going to change who I'll vote for because one of them is pro one and one's pro the other, and we're gonna get the same thing under both of them, no matter what, right? Like you're not getting less, right? I mean, there may be some funding that's denied, it may or whatnot, right? But I don't see, like, the numbers, like, necessarily being impacted in that way. And I think that at the end of the day, a lot of politicians, especially presidents, or at least the ones that I've seen since I've been old enough to vote, they say what their base wants them to say more than they say what they think that like it will speak to their own convictions, if that makes any sense. So yeah, so like I'm not like manipulated in that way to feel like I did something wrong one way or the other. So that's me. I can't answer for Steve. So Steve,
and I don't view it as manipulation. I just think it's like it is what it is. It's like I take it all in balance. And somebody said something similar. I think it was Stephen Marshall put something up there. But yeah, it's like, this is one. I look at the thing Michelle said. It's like, I look at those as two separate issues. The way that and so to be honest too, I don't think Democrats are everything they say they are to minority communities or everything they think they are. I just don't. I think things would be way further along, and you can point to a whole bunch of things, but I think the systems that they set up just don't work, even when they're at their best, and do not empower people. And I think there's a ton of stuff and I hate to say that without having this 5-point plan on what I think the answer is, because that's easy, right? It's easy to criticize somebody else. I just don't think that they're all that they say they are, and so that's why every election I look at everything. So I look at pro-life. I also look at or pro-birth, as Michelle said. I also look at the hey, let's address some of these issues. I think Democrats at least have their hand on the pulse and are able to say look, this is a problem. Whereas typically, and it's just really with the George Floyd thing where I've seen a lot of the right-wing conservative Republicans really get on board and say, hey, there's a problem here. That's new. It's new to me. That white evangelicals are stepping up to do something as it relates, in mass, as it relates to these issues. And so I look at I weigh it all in the balance, and I voted Democrat, I voted Republican. I really just and I hate all of it. I'd rather just have somebody else come up and be like, man, you guys all suck. Let's do this.
Did you have a follow-up, Walker?
Yeah. So on that, I wanna get back to the one saying it really doesn't matter because both sides are the same, but the numbers show the other way around. On Obama administration, there's a lot of funding. There's a lot of Planned Parenthood everywhere in the neighborhood. It's like liquor stores. Now they're defunded most of the time, and they're closing down at least in a rapid rate. That means something, I don't know. That the other cases maybe.
And I think it depends on who you ask as to what it means, right? Because I think that we associate Planned Parenthood with abortion as if that's the only service that Planned Parenthood provides, right? And that's when you get into the politics, right? So there's services that are provided that are needed there in those communities. So when the defunding leaves, you're not taking abortion out, you're taking services out of those communities that are desperately needed, right? That wouldn't be there otherwise. So I think that that's what I mean when I say we're having a political discussion, and that's where some of the manipulation comes to play. Now, I'll say this: I'm ignorant, and I'm ignorant from a place of privilege, right? I'm a male that don't go to Planned Parenthood, and I didn't know that until I said a very broad brush. I'd love to act like I was very, very, very knowledgeable and take some credit for the shout out that somebody just gave me. But I said something very flippant based on me being against anti-abortion about Planned Parenthood, and somebody checked me and educated me and gave me some insight. And I had to back up and say, well, damn, I didn't even know that Planned Parenthood offered all of that, right? So I think that we have to be careful if we're looking to bring some balance and some resources into these communities that we know desperately need it, and we can get somebody to say, hey, they're going this is the only thing that's happening here. So when you get rid of that, and you don't really know what you just voted against, is all I'm saying.
So somebody gave me the number, 3% of their budget goes towards abortions. And so there's a ton of other stuff they're doing. I also look at that and say hey, that's very strategic of them. You know what I'm saying? To keep the abortion, because when you look at it, the numbers are still high as hell. It's and so disproportionate. So it's like you got to do everything you can to like make it look somewhat palatable, like because it's nuts. It is absolutely bonkers. Like when you look at it, and that's how like the black population is no longer like the second highest in the U.S. Like that's a big part of it. So like it is all balanced, and there's a ton of stuff in there to talk about. But what is it like, Walker? Where are you going? Like, is that like? Am I hear you saying like you're Trump 2020 this year?
No, I mean I'm not even voting. I'll be in Ethiopia every voting session. I'm in Ethiopia. I'll be on vacation. But my point or my argument is, why are we complicit? Even though some voting values are against our own belief, why are we complicit to one party to the other? You know what I mean? Like a lot of white people are complicit with the Republican, a lot of black people are complicit with the Democrats. Why is that even the case? What is the deal breaker? That's what I want to know. I'm not going to vote for any Democratic or Republican candidate who's pro-choice. I might not vote forever, but I will not vote for that person. What's the deal breaker for any case for both of you? That's my last question.
Yeah, thank you.
So I don't think there's a deal breaker or deal maker. Like I would honestly vote for who I thought was the right candidate, or like I wouldn't. There's been times when I just haven't voted. Like I don't like. I make decisions based on like what I think is right. So like I'm not somebody that's sucked into I disrespected the sacrifice and people died for my right to vote. Like that doesn't influence me to vote. That influences me to find issues that I'm willing to die for. I think that that's the way that I look to honor their memory. I don't think that I'm honoring somebody that like sacrificed for me to have a right. I don't think I'm honoring it just by casting the ballot. I think that when I'm willing to do what they did and like actually put in that type of work and put myself in a way, a spot where I'm able to do something like that, that's the way I look to honor that memory. But yeah, it's not like that. But yeah, that is not something that's going to influence me to vote Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump wouldn't get a vote for me, and I will vote like against Donald Trump. Like like that. We can put that on wax because yeah, I mean that's where I am on that. It's like there's no me the other way, and like I can be just as anti-abortion as you and still vote for Joe Biden at the end of the day. So like that's where I'm at with it. And like you can't do like can't nobody tell me that I'm not. You know what I'm saying? So
we need that song. It's a little too old. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Anyway, Lil Nas X. Yeah, I would say what I love, Waka, is that you're talking about our complicit. The complicit component here, and with that, I 100% agree. I think that Democrats, Republicans, and Independents are all complicit in all of this garbage. And I honestly think that if we got to the point where we started looking in the mirror first, and if we got to the point where, like, as a constituent, I write a letter or I post on Facebook or Twitter or all these other places where I'm like really happy to like pound somebody from the other side, and where I'm really quiet when my person does the same similar thing. I think once we start like holding, like I think if Trump really heard from like evangelicals specifically, but like Republicans in general, like in large numbers, because apparently like there's this like certain segment of the population that's really far right white supremacist groups that like aren't really, they vote him, but like he doesn't encourage them. But like if I hear that, but like what about everybody else that's in the party? Like if they like stand up and be like, dude, stop, like this is stupid, stop, shut up, Get off Twitter, dude. Do your job. Do your job. Leave Cheryl alone because she criticized you. Now you're like cyberbullying her. And Melania's supposed to be like about cyberbullying, about shutting this stuff down. And you're the biggest cyberbully on the freaking planet. And nobody's saying anything. No Republican is saying, like, I got respect for Pastor Chris Brooks, Pastor Eli Garza, who will stand up and be like, no, I'm a Republican till I die, but this is not it. We don't have that happening. And Democrats, when you guys are using the same tactics and you're going MF this and like you're going super disrespectful too, like nobody's on Trump's level. Let me be clear there. But like the dumb stuff that Democrats do when Democrats don't step up and hold people accountable and be like, no, that's not okay. This is not how we treat another human. This is not how we treat each other. I don't care what he says. You can't do that. You can't do that because my son is next to me seeing this news feed. My daughter is next to me seeing this news feed. I'm trying to like get her to look at you, like look at her. Look at her. Do you see the change? Do you see what she's doing? Do you see the impact she's having? Do you see the change that she's making? Until we stop like sitting on our behinds and just be like and just attacking other people from behind our screens. But when we really start holding each other accountable, that's why I think we're all complicit in there. But I think the first party to really go that route is going to get so many people in the middle because they'll actually have respect. And hopefully like it'll actually be respect for themselves too. Like, like I appreciate, like I feel a little better about myself because I don't feel so connected. So like there's like this just nasty feeling of being connected to something like that I think should be there. So that's my like 100%. I think we need a new way. I think it's time to just shut like this whole system is horrible. I really do. I am super disappointed in these two options. Super disappointed. I think Biden is a mess. I think Trump is a train wreck. I think he's a bull in a china shop. I think he's throwing like he doesn't just throw fuel on the fire. He creates fires, then adds fuel. Like it's mind-boggling. Like the divisiveness. You've never had a president, any Republican, Democrat, anybody this divisive. It's nuts. Absolutely bonkers. And this is America. This is America. Like people are laughing at us all over the freaking world. Like whatever. I'm done. Sorry.
I think that you know, in our lifetime and in my voting life, like we probably have not seen anything like Donald Trump. But I think if you go back before,
no, of course, like there's stuff I'm ignorant of, but yeah,
like we got like Trump is probably more the norm, right? But anyway, Waka, I'll give you 60 seconds to try to fix me and Steve before we get you off, because we're running really late in the show. If not, you can always come back, you know, and try to fix us next time. But go ahead, you got 60 seconds to try to fix both of us.
Man, I got nothing to say. You guys both said it, but I want to quote. I think Malcolm X said, "White America is equally divided, a Republican and Democrat." You guys, which is you know, African Americans, are the dividing force. You know, whichever African Americans lean towards wins most of the time. I don't remember it word by word, but that's the basic idea. And what I see since I've been here for a minute. What I've seen is there is no option. This is it, and then this is what we're gonna pick. You know what I mean? A mud and the dirt all the time, and I don't know how to change it. But there's a libertarian vote coming up. They're showing. I don't know how many of you guys are doing research on them either. I'm just saying. It's just confusing to decide for me. And what I decided, and some other people I've seen in the past was like, I know, you know, the vote is great, but I'm not taking any stone to cast one way or the other, or you know, to put fire on one side or the other, fuel, whatever. That's what I think. You know, I mean, like, I'm gonna wash my hand and just say, hey, I'm out of it. But yeah, I get both of your sides, so I understand it.
Thanks, Waka. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Yes, sir.
I respect the decision to do what you think is right. Unlike most people don't say, damn you for not voting, but like I respect your decision to do what you feel is right. All right, man. Love you, bro.
All right, love you guys.
Yeah, love you too, man. Hey, most people respect you for doing what I think is right. So if you do what I think is right, I respect you.
I respect you if you do what I tell you to do.
Oh boy,
that's the way it works, man. Hey, like, why don't you shoot out a couple comments? I know we're running super late, but we had a bunch of people interacting. Ralph, can you throw us up? Steve, can you see any of the comments, questions?
Yeah, I got them. I got my Facebook feed over here too.
Shoot a few shout outs to some folks. I saw Brian Ferguson Bay chime in and say something a little while ago.
Eric Dean jumped on. Dalia jumped on. Dalia's doing a lot of great stuff. So, Kathy Weitzel, hey, Dalia actually is doing some amazing things with victims of gun violence. Dalia, can you share your link down there in the comments? You should really check out what she's doing. She was actually a young lady in my neighborhood that was in the wrong place at the wrong time this summer and this past summer, and yeah, she's a victim of gun violence. And Dalia like reaches out to families, connects with families, and does a lot there. I really appreciate the work that she's doing to help families. And so if you share a link, that would be good to support that. But yeah, welcome everybody. What you can do, so we're about to shut stuff down, but one of the things that would be good, would be helpful for us. So we do have a YouTube channel. If we could share, I don't know if we could share, I think I could share that in the comments. But yeah, I'd love to have people jump on and subscribe. You can also watch things there, live there as well at times. But we'll cut this stuff up for people that don't have the tolerance. Like one trick I have, especially on YouTube, like I'll put it like twice the speed so I can get through like 30 minutes of video in 15 minutes or 1.5, just depending on how things are. But we'll break this stuff up into 5-minute segments for people that like want to watch it, want to share it. We do want to have, like, I really appreciate my mom being on here, because I think those are the kind of conversations that, like, having honest conversations from different perspective is good, man, and can help to like kind of build some of this relational stuff as well. We need more of that. We need more honesty. We need more safe spaces to be having this, to kind of hash some of this stuff out. So if this adds value to you, if you guys could like share some stuff with other people that you think would be interested. If you have some stuff that you want to see us talk about in the future, people mentioned media bias. We are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about, like, is there like some puppeteers behind this, the background, trying to like get us to move and think in a particular way for a particular reason. So we're going to get into that kind of stuff, but sharing that kind of stuff, like what you want us to see, talk about. We really want more people to call in. So yeah, but that's it, man. I appreciate you, Dewan. You got an event coming up this week too, stuff that you can people can support.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. We appreciate y'all. Thank everybody that jumped on. We hope that you guys felt like your position was respected. Your point of view was respected. So many of you know, many of you may not know, that I run an organization called Black Leaders Detroit, and we're actually doing a marketing campaign that we're going to launch this Friday. So I'm glad that we won't be competing with the Trump rally on Juneteenth. Look for us. You should see some articles coming out this week. Hopefully we'll get on the news a little bit, and it's kind of like, a secret. We don't keep it under wraps until Friday, but you'll see it on social media. You can find us at BL Detroit on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, so we're looking to continue to support Black-owned businesses in the city of Detroit and Black-led for impact, aka nonprofits in the city of Detroit. So blackleadersdetroit.org is where you can find us on the web.
Yep. And yeah, I think it's, you know, a lot of white people can get thrown off by a title like Black Leaders Detroit. I'll tell you why I appreciate it. You see consistently that, you know, Black business owners have a challenge getting equity, getting capital for their business. Not equity, getting capital for their business. So this is one of the ways that you guys are actually stepping up to address that and really support people inside of Detroit that are doing some great things and some amazing things in a way that's needed. So it's kind of like, it's interesting. It's like, you know, when you don't do anything and things fall apart, people don't have much to say, like, but other than like, see, things are falling apart. When you do something, it's like, well, you know, well, why is it just for Black people? It's like, there's a real need here. You guys are looking to fill that need and to meet that gap. And, you know, I appreciate it. So I'm happy to be a member of what you guys are doing. You guys should definitely check out the website. I'm excited for what you guys are doing, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And we appreciate all y'all for watching, staying with us. Yeah, let's make this world better. Let's pass this off to the next generation better.
We found it.
You know what I mean? I definitely appreciate your mom coming on and talking about like her parents, and then like knowing her and then knowing you and thinking about where your kids will take this. That gives me hope. So
yeah, it was great.
Don't take somebody doing the work. Right?
Yep.
All right,
so Ralph, you gonna take us home?
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.